What's up, hockey fans? Welcome back to Season 1, Episode 4 of the Post Huggers podcast. Steve, how are you doing today?
I am doing well, my friend. Not stepping foot outside in Arizona because it's an unbelievable oven out there. And for any listener that says at least it's a dry heat, turn your oven on to about 130 degrees. Wait for it to warm up, open up that door, and when that waft hits you in the face, please tell me how good that feels. But other than that, spectacular, my friend.
Yep. And I will be feeling that heat when this podcast drops on Friday. So I will be in Arizona playing in a golf tournament. That's going to be fun and fantastic.
Hydrate.
Yep. Lots of water, lots of H2O. But Steve.
And Gatorade.
Yes. Gatorade. Yep. A lot of electrolytes are going to be going in the body, But Steve, who we got today on the podcast? Who's in between the pipes? Who do we have in the blue paint?
So today is our extra special Couch Putin GM session with none other than you and me, Goldie. We're going to be checking out our buddies at Cap Friendly. Love Cap Friendly.
I think you mean the Washington Capitals Cap Friendly now.
You can drop that down afterwards, a little bit of news in our bio afterwards. But yes, though it seems like the Washington Capitals have bought Cap Friendly. Oddly enough, the Caps bought Cap. But we are going to look at the cap for the upcoming season and a little bit into the future seasons for the two teams in the Stanley Cup playoffs right now, the Oilers and the Panthers. And we're going to take a look to see how they're doing. Because just so for everybody to know, this happened with me and Chris from Pigeonhole Podcast. This also happens with me and Goldie.
Yeah,
we will just start talking and he can be calling me about anything, and then all of a sudden we're talking hockey. A couple hours passes and we realize we should have just created a podcast with it. So Cap Friendly, the GM thing is fun to do. And we're going to jump all over this. So we're going to start off by looking at the Edmonton Oilers and how they're looking going into the next season. So bear with me here while I get the screen shared on over here, everybody.
And for those on YouTube, you will be able to see this. For those on Apple or Spotify or any other podcast forum that you're listening to this on, we'll do the best we can to describe what we're looking at. And you can also follow along if you go to Cap Friendly and go to the Edmonton Oilers. So here we go.
All right. So for everybody to get on the same page, because not everybody has nothing better to do in their free time and in their dreams like I do, because I told Goldie I actually dream about hockey.
He does.
So
and haunted houses, apparently.
And haunted houses. And some of these freaking teams are haunted houses right now. But the salary cap is going from 84.5 million now up to 88 million, which is going to provide some relief. Okay. And just so you know, Cap Friendly does have these little advertisements that pop up. So I do apologize a bit, but hey, they got to pay the bills. But right now, going into next year, the Edmonton Oilers only have $10 million in cap space coming up. Okay. So, and their general manager is Ken Holland. He did a good job with the Detroit Red Wings. We'll talk to the Edmonton Oilers fans because I want them chiming in as well as Florida Panther fans at the end of all this, to say how they think their GM is doing and what they think they could have added. Now, we're going to scroll down here and the first thing we want to look at, and you hear me snicker a little bit, is going to be all the RFAs coming into next year. The Edmonton Oilers, just on offense, have one restricted free agent in Dylan Holloway, and then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different guys. Now, they may not bring back a Corey Perry, right? He took a 1-year deal at, I believe, at $1 million. I'd have to. Oh, actually, it's off the screen now, so I can't see it. But I thought it was $1 million is what he signed for. But if I, feel free to correct me, everybody. But there's a few players on here they may not bring back. Perry, Gagne, possibly Fogle. It just really depends. It depends on where they're looking and what they need to do to add. But this is just on offense. Now, the one thing I do want to note, though, Goldie, There's a pretty big one right here.
Yeah, Leon Draisaitl will be a free agent in the 25-26 season, and he's going to want at least $14 million. So get ready to pull your pockets out and have them hurting Edmonton Oilers, because the year after that, Connor McDavid becomes a free agent, and he's going to want at least 20. Now
he wants $1 billion, and you have to pay it to him.
He wants whatever he asks. He's gonna get somewhere. A team like Utah that has cap
44 plus $1 million.
Yeah, could offer him 20 million and be perfectly fine and add players around him. So he's going to get what he wants somewhere. Will it be with the Edmonton Oilers? I'm sure all Oilers fans are very, very hopeful that will be that way. And I'm sure they're hoping that they can get a Leon Draisaitl extension this summer.
Okay, but for everybody looking at this, though, right?
Yes.
The big significance of this is it's not always guaranteed the cap's going to go up in an additional year.
Yep.
And at 8.5 million, let's just say he's asking, he should get more than what McDavid's getting right now. And McDavid's going to get a bump. I see Draisaitl coming in that $13 to $14 million range. And if that ends up happening, that's $4.5 million more dollars. That, if you take a look at your salary cap right here, there's your problem, because that will leave you at about $5.5 million, depending on how the deal comes.
And these prices, these salary caps that they have left are with the new number of 88 million involved. So that is important to note, and that is with free agents counted.
Now, if these guys decide to do a team-friendly deal to help build a juggernaut team that can go back and start winning cup after cup after cup, like the old Edmonton Oilers, and hey, all the power to them if they're willing to do that.
So $10 million a player instead of 20.
Yeah. So right here, they're okay. Now we're looking on defense, right? And Vincent Desharnais, he has been doing pretty well. He is a big, big boy. So he's going to get a bump in pay. Yeah. Troy Stetcher, he was playing with the Coyotes, doing a pretty darn good job. He may go back, but, he may want to go back to Utah, the former Coyotes, because, for all the bashing that the Coyotes always got, the players liked playing here. Yep. And for the hockey fans, okay, so I know there's Oilers fans that have been here for hockey games, and if one of them tells me it wasn't awesome going to a game in shorts, a t-shirt with their jersey over their shoulder, having a pint and a bite to eat outside in the middle of winter in Arizona, if they tell me they didn't like it, they're full of shit. But now we got to go back to this, okay, on defense, okay? Evan Bouchard, he's a big part of that lineup, and he's at 3.9 million, and in 25-26, he's up again.
Yep.
So Oilers fans, you guys are in definitely some trouble when it comes to the cap.
Yeah, and I will be honest here, the contract that sticks out the most to me is Darnell Nurse at 9.25 million. That's bad.
And he is signed all the way through the
end of 29-30. That contract needs to be renegotiated if he wants to stay in Edmonton. If I was Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, I am going to him and I am saying, we're renegotiating all of our contracts. Let's bring you down to about 7, which is still, I believe, overpay.
Matthias Ekholm at $6 million is a good deal.
That is.
And look, Darnell Nurse brings a certain element to his game. The offensive side hasn't been up there, but he will jump into play. But he's not as strong of a defender, in my humble opinion. And remember, people, I'm not a hockey expert. I watch an epic ton of hockey. But, Nurse is, when it comes to that amount of money. Now, hey, everybody has off years, right? Look at Bobrovsky. Look at that contract. Right now, if Nurse all of a sudden gets a resurgence and becomes a top pairing guy in defense,
then that's a good contract.
Then he can justify that contract. But it's a lot of money to be tied up when you've got guys that, like, look, if you ask me right now, who would I rather have on my team, Nurse or Bouchard, it's Bouchard.
Bouchard.
So 9.25 million.
Yeah, no, it's a little steep, and I think that you got to look at their goaltenders too.
Okay, this is the most massive part for them, because if we're
Yep.
going to criticize anything, Goldie, about a team not doing something, to go into the playoffs, this was our question mark going into the playoffs for them, or at that free agent deadline, right?
Yep.
So go ahead and you speak your piece, because you got somebody on there that you love.
I think that Jack Campbell has been mistreated, to say the least, by the Edmonton Oilers. Now, Edmonton Oilers fans, you can come at me all you want. I've watched him play for the Kings. I've watched him play for Toronto. He is a starting goaltender. There's something wrong within your organization when it comes to goaltenders recently and losing confidence. When you look back to goaltenders that should have been really, really good for you guys, they haven't been. Stuart Skinner hasn't been good. He hasn't been awful either, I will say that. But if you are having Calvin Pickard above Jack Campbell, there is something seriously wrong with your organization when it comes to goaltenders.
Let's just jump in there for a second. And part of that problem is the $5 million tag and how up against the cap they were. Because remember, everybody, when you're looking at cap friendly right now, there's an extra $4.5 million in there. Without that, you shrink it on down. You guys were up against the cap.
Yep.
Okay. And again, going back to my criticism is, you could have brought Jack Campbell in, but you had to shed other contracts, which makes it tough. The other thing is there was Jake Allen, Montreal Canadian, who has a Stanley Cup, who has a lot of playoff experience, who's a very steady goaltender. You guys could have picked him up. It did not cost a lot for the New Jersey Devils to pick him up. And sorry, Calvin, Jake Allen is a better goalkeeper, in my opinion. And he, because of his steadiness, he could have helped coach along and help Stuart Skinner. So why the Oilers did not want to dance with the Canadians? Give up a second round pick, and a third round pick, and the Canadians retain salary, and he was on your team. And I think that made you the better team, because going in with Allen, when they had to pull Skinner when he was just looking shaky in the previous round, having a Jake Allen step in, you would have had a lot more confidence. He's been there before. Now, am I saying that Jake Allen now is one of the most elite goaltenders in the league? No. But Jake Allen can be steady. He can play a lot of minutes and still have good results. And it was a Band-Aid solution, for this problem right now. That would have probably worked a couple of years, and I would have said they're in better shape. So as a couch potato GM, Goldie, what do the Edmonton Oilers need to do?
Well, it depends. If they win the cup this year, they really try to bring guys back on team-friendly deals. If they don't, you maybe try to move a couple pieces. I think Jack Campbell is a guy that it's going to be hard to move that contract, right? Because he's got to modify.
You've got to move him to a team. You're going to have to give up picks.
You're going to have to move him. And he's got to modify no trade clause. And I would like to know if you could scroll down to that. Does it happen to say if it's a 16 or a 5, or what kind of team deal does he have on that?
There it is right there. Player submits a 10 team, no trade list.
No trade list. So, I mean, there's other teams you could trade him to, but are those teams that want him? I think that if you really truly care about your team and you really want good goaltending, I think you have to give Jack Campbell the reins again, or you have to trade him. He's not going to be a backup at $5 million a year. I just don't think that's feasible for you, especially with Stuart Skinner, your quote unquote starter, making 2.6. You just don't see that a lot. I think you honestly might bring back a guy like Troy Stetcher, especially if you can't re-sign some of your other guys on the back end. If you could scroll up there for me, Steve, that would be greatly appreciated. Here we go. Yeah, no, and I think Sam Gagner is gone. I think honestly, Adam Henrique, I think he'll probably be back for a lower end deal. I think that Corey Perry will retire. I think especially if they do end up getting a cup, I think he retires, no doubt. At this point of this recording, the Florida Panthers are up 1-0 in the series. So that's why I'm saying if that happens and if they end up winning the cup. And then I think there's a couple guys on this list that you could kind of let walk. Obviously, you're not going to want to let Dylan Holloway walk. I think he's too young to let him walk away. But I think that Connor Brown might be a guy you kind of let walk. You can kind of replace him in the offseason with maybe a guy who's a little bit younger, maybe a little bit cheaper too. And go from there.
So I'm scrolling on down to their forwards that are not, have not cracked the lineup yet, right?
Yep.
So here is, some of their forwards right here, and this is what they're making, right? So, and defense wise, here's some more of their players, and then goaltending depth, going forward. So in my humble opinion on this too, you still got to focus around McDavid and Draisaitl. You've got to, as a GM, try to convince them to go on team-friendly deals, right? And then
and I would try to do it with both this offseason.
Yeah, get them locked in and get that taken care of.
Get the elephant out of the room.
Now, the toughest contract to move is going to be Nurse, because if you try to train him, you've got to retain salary. You have to, which sucks, and that's a long time to retain salary. We've got 6 years of contract to retain. So the only way you can unload that, once again, is you've got to find a team that's rebuilding like the San Jose Sharks. So I'll take a step back and I will address this. Is for anybody that thinks the former Arizona Coyotes Utah hockey team is going to take on another bad contract, you do not understand hockey and you do not understand why they were doing what they were doing. Now, living here,
and you don't understand the new owner who wants to make the Stanley Cup playoffs in year one.
And has a ton of money and willing to do it. There's the other point, right? So the reason the Coyotes were taking on all these bad contracts, like the Shea Weber one was a beautiful one to take on for them, because it actually only cost them a couple $100,000, maybe 300, 400,000, whatever the tail end of his contract was. But he had that high cap hit, right? There was almost a deal in the works to take on Carey Price, but I think what had happened in that case is they knew they were going to be competitive sooner, so they didn't want to do it, right?
Yeah.
So those contracts, the reason why they kept taking them was to get to the cap floor. Now, living here, was it frustrating the last 4 years watching that team? Yes, it was, because they had to grind their way just to stay competitive in games. Now, last season, for anybody that didn't know, when the Coyotes went on their 14-game losing skid, okay, they knew they were moving. And for people who are like, well, you're a pro, it's not a big deal. No, there's guys that have been here their whole career, like Clayton Keller, right?
Yep.
Likes it here in Arizona.
Family.
There was other people here that loved staying here. So imagine just knowing you have to uproot. And then, am I saying Salt Lake City was their first destination? I doubt it. Because, again, if you had the choice to live in Salt Lake City or a place like Toronto, Montreal, Tampa, we can go down the list of all these nice areas to live. They may have preferred to live in a different destination that offered a little bit more, right? Yeah. However, what they walked into, and you already alluded to this, Heath, is a guy with deep pockets that wants to win and win now. And I'm calling it right now, Utah makes the playoffs next year. Because the Coyotes don't go on that losing skid. They beat the last 6 Stanley Cup champions. They beat the Colorado Avalanche in tight games, coming back and winning twice. 1 time's a fluke, 2 times is not a fluke. They have a lot of great pieces on this team. We're going to see places where they can be, we're going to allude to that in the next one, where I think a few guys may end up on Utah. So now back to this team. This is where the San Jose Sharks, they're in trouble for a while. The Chicago Blackhawks are in trouble for a while. Now, the Chicago Blackhawks already have a big young defender that they're paying a lot of money to. Maybe because the rebuilding is going to take a while, you present Nurse, because there's that physicality to protect Bedard, right? Maybe that's a destination. But this contract, if you're looking at moving one piece that's going to help, that's one. And the next one is Campbell. Yeah. And what you have to do, unfortunately, when you're going to do that, is you're going to have to mortgage the future a little bit to go and do that. And that just means draft picks to take on those contracts.
Yep.
And if you're getting something back in return, it's a prospect that's not going to cost you a lot of money, but preferably a prospect you can throw into your current system to still help, right?
Yeah.
And Oilers fans, it only makes sense what we're saying right now based on this right here, what you have available, but based on your two juggernauts that change the game for your franchise.
Yeah, and not to mention that the 2 years after McDavid is up, Hyman is up as well. So I mean, you as a GM, you have to look 4 years in the future. You also have to be able to look at the here and now. That's why being a GM is not the easiest position in hockey. It is the hardest to make these very, very tough decisions. I mean, you look at their offense alone, and I think how many players do they have for sure coming back next year based on just cap alone?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
They have 7. That's not enough, obviously. So you're gonna have to move guys. I think a guy you could move that's maybe in that spot that maybe people aren't thinking about is maybe even Stuart Skinner. And that would be very interesting, but I could see them doing it if it means being able to send Darnell Nurse somewhere. If you do those two guys together somewhere where a team maybe is looking for a goalie and they're also looking for a top 4 defenseman, because I don't think he's a bottom pairing. I think he's a top 4 when he's on his game. If, say the San Jose Sharks come calling and they want Nurse and they want, Stuart Skinner, I'm seriously considering that if they're willing to take on both contracts fully and not make myself as the GM of the Oilers retain any of that. Now, Oilers fans, you may come for me for that one, but Jack Campbell is a quality goaltender who can play hockey. There's a reason you've signed him to a $5 million deal per year. He's not a schlub. Your coaching killed his confidence. The pulling him in areas where they shouldn't have killed his confidence. If you're blaming anyone for that contract being wasted right now, it's your former coach. So that's who you should blame. That's the last I'm going to say about Jack Campbell there. But that's a trade that I could see happening. Is that something you could see happening too, Steve?
Anything's on the table, right? And here's, finding a good goaltender is tough. Now, like I said, there's going to be Oilers fans that are saying you guys are nuts right now for talking about the goaltending aspect because they have made the Cup Finals.
Yep.
Yeah, but Skinner he's had some games where he's been on and has been lights out, but he's had some really shaky games. And I have yet to see Stuart Skinner absolutely steal a game. There was one game I could say against Dallas that I thought he was really good. But Dallas wasn't rocketing off the shots they normally rocketed off, right?
Yeah.
So, because what you would have loved to have seen last game, is him make one of those 2 saves, either against Verhaeghe, or against Rodriguez. You want to try to see him come up with one of those huge saves, and he hasn't done that. Where Bobrovsky made at least 3 to 4 breakaway saves alone, right? And again, Bobrovsky is a top echelon goalie who has a big contract. Yeah. So this is a good way to segue now into the other team.
Yeah. And before we do that, let's hear a message from DraftKings, our sponsor of this episode.
Hey, how's it going, hockey fans? The chase for the Stanley Cup continues, and the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, is just as hot as it is on the ice. With same-game parlays, live betting, odds boost, and so much more, don't miss out as the Stanley Cup playoffs wind down. Right now, the Edmonton Oilers are at plus 110 to win the Cup, and the Florida Panthers at a negative 130. And don't be like me and give your buddies good advice without betting, such as picking the Florida Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers to make the Cup Finals. And if you're new to DraftKings, you got to check this out. New customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sports app now and use the code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER Or in West Virginia, visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPENY or text HOPENY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after insurance. See dkng.co/ice for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms and responsibility gaming resources. Copy NHL 2024, all rights reserved.
All right, so now we're going to move over to the Florida Panthers, okay? So let me go ahead and stop the screen share here. We're going to reshare the screen. This dude just popped out at me talking. Detroit Lenny at Detroit Lenny. Like all of a sudden I was looking down, and you'll see him in here in a second, but my goodness, like I looked down on my screen and Lenny was making an emphatic statement about something. So there you go. Free advertising for you, Lenny. I have no idea what you were saying, but
give us a call and
we'll have you on the pod at some point.
We'll have you on the pod.
Now here we go. Now we're looking at the at the Florida Panthers. Okay, so the interesting thing for the Panthers going into their to next year, they've got $20 million in cap space. Okay, seems like a lot of money, right?
It's not.
Hold on, because there's some major key pieces and guys that are going to get raises. All right, so right away, the first one I'm going to point out, this man right here in 2 years, playoff Verhaeghe. However, the biggest one on this list is, Sam Reinhart.
Mm-hmm.
Reinhart was excellent 5-on-5 special teams, getting shorties, getting power play goals. What did he end up with? He was over the 50 mark. What did he end up with this year?
I believe it was 56, if I'm not mistaken, but I will check on that.
You check on that one for me, but everybody. We're getting more 50 goal scorers in the league now because of the rule changes. And I like the rule changes. For anybody that hates them, like I love the calls on hooking, the slashes on the hands when somebody's taking a shot, the modified icing rules, everything that has made the game faster. Because for those of us that grew up in the 80s and had to put up with 2-line passes, and actually for everybody that says, oh, I hate the puck over the glass to delay a game, in the 80s, it was common practice that when you were under pressure, just to turn and fire the puck over the glass. Now, could the referees call delay a game? Yeah, it was up to them if they wanted to enforce it or not, and that was the problem. You can't leave it up to a ref to decide if they want to enforce it because it was not properly enforced.
Yeah, Verhaeghe had 34 goals, 38 assists for 72 points. Reinhart was their top scorer with 57 goals, 37 assists, and 94 points.
Okay, so everybody,
good luck signing both those guys in the next 2 years.
But hold on a second, because we're scrolling down, and here it is. Brandon Montour is up as well.
Yup.
That is another major piece of this, right? So, goaltending-wise, I think you guys are fine. Again, want to see a healthy Spencer Knight come back into the NHL and play at his top level.
Yeah.
Goaltending wise, you're okay, but this is the hilarious one for us because everybody thought this was the worst contract in NHL 2 years ago. And right now, back-to-back Stanley Cup final appearances makes this say it was worth it. And the way he played game one, absolutely showed it. And go back to our previous pod. Look at that ridiculous double pad stack stick up save because it was just friggin' lightning. So, but now you're looking at this, right? If you're a GM and you're having to negotiate with Reinhart, what do you think Reinhart gets next year? Because I think $12 million sounds about right to me.
I was gonna say about 12, but thinking about this from a logical standpoint, 10. He may go anywhere between 8 and 10. And the only reason I say that is because there's no state income tax in the state of Florida. So he's not going to get crazy taxed on that money. So it's the same thing with Vegas, right? Vegas can sign guys for lower costs because they're going to get more of the money. So can Dallas, so can a few other places. So those teams typically get guys for a little bit cheaper, and you're going, why are they getting them for cheaper? It's because they're not getting dinged with state income tax. So that is something to always think about when you're looking at guys and talking about guys being signed for certain costs. I still think he's probably going to get up around 10.
Now, if they do the model like the Montreal Canadiens do and the Boston Bruins did it at one point, Boston Bruins are another team we're going to be talking about on another episode. But if they say you can't get paid more than the captain and he's okay with that, then great. If he says, I want to make multiple cup runs, like you're not going to get him at a $5 million. He's earned a big pay raise here.
Well, it does seem like they are doing that too. Not, no payment higher than the captain, because I think the highest that I've seen is 10 million, and that was Bobrovsky
and Barkov.
And Barkov. Am I mistaken that anyone else is making more money than that?
Nope, you're not at all. So you may see that happen where they give him a 9.5, just like Tkachuk, and they give him the term, right? Because Reinhardt's 28. That's only 2 years older than Tkachuk, and he's got some years on him. So maybe you give him 9.5 million, give him the exact same term, and it keeps him happy. But that 9.5 million has now dropped your projected cap use down to almost half. And you still have Montour to sign, right? Kulikov, Ekman Larson, you can get on the cheap. Josh Mahura, he'll be, if you want to keep him in your lineup too, he's an RFA, or you could deal his rights and get something else for him. But you still have only 7 players, and you've got to repay all these other guys. So they're going to walk away from Okposo. That's going to happen. They're going to want to keep Lombard because he fits in. He's got speed. He's got that edge. They're going to want to keep Cousins because Cousins is a royal pain in the ass and effective at doing it. He gets under everybody's skin, but he's still got hockey talent. So there's guys on this team you're going to want to keep. And if Tarasenko gets a cup, Tarasenko is going to get himself a nice contract on another team. Now, Vladdy is not scoring as much as he used to, but he's not afraid to check, not afraid to get in the corners, and he has come up with a few big goals for them. So Tarasenko may get a contract in their team for some length. And again, this is where I'm going to point to a team like the Utah Coyotes, because that's what I'm going to call them, because Utah Hockey Club is just dumb. The Utah Coyotes go ahead and they want to make offers here. They can go right ahead and offer a Reinhardt a $13 million a year, 10-year deal, whatever the max on deals is. I think it's 8 now, right?
It's 8, yeah.
It's 8. So an 8-year deal, $13 million, and they can do it. They can go after a Montour and offer him, they're not going to want to do, an 8 with him, but probably a 6-year deal to get him to the age of 36. They add those 2 players to their team alone. They're doing well. But the interesting part in all this, like I say, is Sam Bennett. Sam Bennett's huge for them. When he got back into the lineup right away, he is a world-class talented pest. World-class in this league now, right? And the amazing thing is how many of these players, like a team like the Calgary Flames, gave up on, right? They were not wanting him to do what he was good at, right? Which was go in, grind it out. They wanted him to score highlight reel goals, in my opinion, and he's found his niche on his team. And then the next one's Verhaeghe, right? So you guys have got some problems, right? You've got to figure this out, because if you do get rid of a Reinhardt, that really impacts your team, and you got to replace them. And if you want to go for something like Gensel, well, Gensel's going to cost you money if you replace them. So the only thing that would shock the hell out of me is somehow they're able to come up with team-friendly deals, contracts to keep all these guys, but you just can't. It's just not in the numbers. So there's going to be a shakeup of this roster next year.
And another thing that if you could go down to the goaltenders for me for a second, Stolarz is a free agent. And he had outstanding numbers. He played 27 games, 16 wins, 7 losses, 2 overtime losses, 2.03 goals against average, and a 9.25 save percentage. He was in the top 10. And he played a quality number of games. So, I mean, if you look at that, and there's no way in my mind that you can bring him and Spencer Knight and Bobrovsky back. There's no way in my mind that happens unless he takes a major team-friendly deal, which he may, but honestly, he's going to get paid somewhere big time. I could see him going somewhere like Utah, or even I'd say San Jose very lightly, because they have so many goaltenders, but they've had a goaltending carousel there in the last 2 seasons. I think they've had like 7 or 8 guys play in between their pipes. So, and guys they've traded for. So it's very interesting to see what San Jose is doing, and we'll get into that in another episode. We'll get into Utah in another episode, but we're just throwing out teams with a lot of cap room that could take these guys. Montour, you have to bring back, in my eyes.
You have to. You can't let him go. He's been too big.
Ekman-Larsson, I think you have to bring him back, but I think he takes a team-friendly deal. I think he'll.
He got paid big bucks in his buyout, right?
Yeah,
so he's still okay. And look, Ekman-Larsson, I had the pleasure of watching him play his first NHL game here in Arizona. Got to meet him several times. Super nice guy. Where it fell apart for Ekman-Larsson was when Rick Tocchet took over and Shane Doan left, because they wanted to give the captaincy to Ekman-Larsson, but somehow they wanted him to be a Doan leader. Doan, love you, Shane. Really do. Great guy. Your son is an awesome person too. But Doan has crazy farm boy strength. Heath, you saw him ragdoll Brown and Richards when he wanted his revenge after the conference final loss.
Yes.
And to tell you how ridiculous it was, literally Doan grabbed a hold of Richards and just one-handed just threw him. And I just went, and Richards is a bigger and better in shape man than I am. I think Shane Doan could just pick me up with his finger and flick me across the room, and I would break every bone in my body.
Probably.
But Ekman-Larsson could not step in and do that, and he was being asked to do it. Now, Ekman-Larsson was great at throwing that skilled body check that hurt, right? But when you wanted him to go in and fight guys when something happened, when you wanted him just to be throwing bone-crunching hit after bone-crunching hit, going into the corners super hard all the time, it wasn't his style of play. And everybody, we're going to speak to the mental health part of the game because, hey, we advocate for this stuff and we know things go on in his life.
Yeah.
And Ekman-Larsson, when he lost his mother to cancer, it took a lot out of him. And for people to say, well, you're a professional, you just got to get past that. You can't. I lost my mother last October and I am not over that. I'm nowhere near over that. And it impacts you. So I can't imagine having to play high level hockey and keeping my head fully into the game, because that just weighs on you. So there was a couple of factors for Ekman-Larsson, but he's showing some of his old play in there, right? He has been looking pretty solid throughout these playoffs.
Yeah.
And, playing a great team like the New York Rangers, he held his own and he contributed, right? So he's probably going to want to stay there on the cheap, but this team is going to look different next year. There's no way you get rid of Bobrovsky after what he's done, because he's still showing he's got it in the tank. I think you may try to get Stolarz on a cheaper deal and move Spencer Knight, because Spencer Knight's only 23 years old. Now, he's had his own issues. He's had his own demons. And like we said, we hope he comes back. But when he entered the league, he looked good. When he played for Team USA, he looked damn good. So there's a shit ton of potential for him, right?
Yeah.
But with that potential, can come somebody willing to make a good deal, right?
Yeah.
And so, like I said, I'm really interested in seeing how this shakes down, and maybe, I don't know, Panthers fans, do you try to look to deal an Aaron Ekblad? Do you try to move him? Because that's $7.5 million.
No.
And if you're talking to me, well, this is where I'm throwing this out.
Yeah.
That's $7.5 million going to Reinhart. If I had to pick between two players, I want Reinhart on my roster.
Yeah, but I do believe that that Ekblad, he's kind of the heart and soul of that team. He was drafted first overall, if I'm not mistaken, and he has been there his entire career. I see him, if they came to him and told him, we're going to have to trade you or you're going to have to renegotiate your contract, I think he goes lower on his contract.
I see that he's got 12 teams he would not be willing to be traded to. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, and Forsling's another guy that is signed long term there, who is a waiver claim, believe it or not, and he's playing absolutely lights out right now with a no movement clause. So I mean, you have issues on the back end that you're gonna have to address. Opozo's gone. I think that he's done what he's needed to do there. If he comes back, it's league minimum, the only reason I say that is because they have other issues that I think Tarasenko might be one of their top priorities. And that's, just purely because I think that he brings an element to the game. And I think Reinhardt's another guy that I think those two guys, if you could nail them down, I think you're looking at your team going, okay, we did the right things. I think that there's a couple other guys on this team, lineup that I think you're going to have to re-sign, like Longberg and those guys. But
Longberg's loved out there.
Yes.
Beautiful hockey flow, insane energy every single shift. And he can generate a goal for you, right? So he's a guy you've got to bring back.
He's a guy you got to bring back. But honestly, I don't see it happening unless you move on from a few contracts.
But there's a reason why it brought up. And I agree with you, Goldie. When we say these things, guys, we know it's not an easy decision, right? This is pure financial. And the thing is, if Ekblad has a Stanley Cup item, let's say he gets that win, right? And they want to turn around and make a trade and send him to a team that's looking for a defensive upgrade somewhere in their lineup. Right now at $7.5 million, he could help a team, that needs that little bit of a boost. Like, let's say the Toronto Maple Leafs need some help on defense, because they do. Now, they're going to have some cap space and want to move a few guys around, like Mitch Marner. Can't see him re-signing. We're jumping ahead on this one, but that may be a good fit for him, and you can justify it 100%, moving him and Toronto taking him based on the fact that he now has that cup, which Leafs are having a hard time in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Just throwing it out there. Like, again, everybody, these aren't easy things. It's not like, well, just go ahead and do this, because now you got to fill that gap, right?
Yeah, we're not playing NHL 24 here. Throwing guys around for favorite guys we like around the league. We're looking at this as if we are the GM of this team. What's the overall benefit to get rid of guys to the ratio of keeping other guys? And I'm with you there, Steve. I think that if it's a decision between him and Reinhardt, you have to go Reinhardt. The only thing is going to be who is on that 12-team no-trade list. It's probably going to be bottom-tier teams that are on that no-tier trade list.
Well, but what's going to be interesting now is, okay, so Arizona was always flagged as that team nobody wanted to go to. And again, for people who haven't been here, fall, winter, spring in Arizona is absolutely brilliant. You can say the same thing about Vegas, right, Goldie?
Yeah.
Brilliant. You get a couple of cold days, like you can wake up to some freezing temps, but that lasts for about a whole 2 hours overnight, and it's beautiful during the day. So that's why the Golden Knights, besides having like the biggest entertainment, area besides New York City, right, was a big destination for hockey players to go to. They can do a lot of stuff, right?
Oh, yeah.
A lot of. Now, Arizona was the same way. The problem was ownership, right? So now some of these players can look and say, I'm going to a young, good, talented team, and I could add something to that team, right? And that guy, again, wants to spend money. We're going to do the next episode on them, just so we can go down and dissect it, who we think they're going to get.
Yes.
As well as like a team like the San Jose Sharks, who should they go after, right? And then we're going to do 3 teams. Goldie, we're going to do them, and we're going to throw the Golden Knights in that mix, because we know.
Oh, they're in deep trouble.
If you're looking at these 2 lists, everybody, if you want to feel better about your team, all right? And it's not Vegas talent on the Golden Knights. But go look how capped-effed they are.
Oh, my goodness.
Hey, guys from Cap Friendly, why don't you come up with, because now we know you've been sold to the Washington Capitals, come up with your new one, cappedf.com.
Yep. Yeah, no. But no, it's something where, like, me and Steve, we've talked about this for long periods of time about teams. And it's something where we're going to be doing this throughout the entire offseason and a little bit of, obviously, the season, because the season's still going. But we picked these 2 teams because, obviously, they're in the Stanley Cup final. There's a reason they're there. They're I would not say they're the two best teams. Like you've heard a common trend in this whole podcast so far through the first 4 episodes, the Rangers and the Florida Panthers are the two best teams in the National Hockey League. The Edmonton Oilers just happen to be the West Coast team. And as sad as it is to say that is the case, that is the case. If you're an Edmonton Oilers fan and you believe that you would beat either of these teams, if you end up doing it, you can come back for me, but and Steve. But if you really truly believe you're going to beat the New York Rangers and or the Florida Panthers, you're a fanatic, and you're not looking at this as you're lucky if you win the cup in my eyes, if you're Edmonton and everything has to go right.
They need Stuart Skinner.
That's why I said they need everything to go right.
Yeah, but so when I'm saying it again, Stuart Skinner, is he a better goaltender than I ever was? Well, hell yeah, I did not play semi-pro, pro hockey, et cetera, down the list, right? I'm just a knucklehead who loves the game. But, Bobrovsky has every single series made saves to steal a friggin' game.
Yeah.
And look, let's go back to your Rangers series. The one shot that went right off, Trocheck just grazed his jersey and went in. He was just half an inch forward, and that hits his shoulder and explodes over. There were some perfect shots to beat them. The same thing happened to Shesterkin. If the Edmonton Oilers have a Shesterkin or a Bobrovsky in net right now, with their high-powered offense and the weight with their speed of the game, those guys could easily defend the back end, and it's a different story. And I know, we hate trying to call it a player. Is this on Skinner's shoulders? No, it wouldn't be on. No, this is where it falls to the GM, right, and some of the players in the locker room. But they could have done a few things. Now, like last year, a brilliant move was bringing on Ekholm. What a friggin' pickup by the Edmonton Oilers. Genius move. This season, not as much, and they needed that help in goal. They just needed that boost in confidence, and there was teams that were miserable with players. And who knows? We don't see what happens in trade deadline days, guys, right? We don't get to see this stuff. And, maybe they had stuff that fell through for whatever reason. But the bottom line is their biggest areas didn't get addressed. But what the Edmonton Oilers have between Draisaitl, McDavid, and Bouchard on defense, and I'm just throwing them out there. I know there's a whole other team of players on there, guys, that helped us out, but those 3 guys in themselves can change a game because Bouchard gets massive goals. So if you win, it's because those guys really stepped it up, and then the role players on the team were able to shut down the Florida Panthers. But that means all 4 lines have to be rolling, shot blocking, hitting, and they've just got to play perfect hockey, in my opinion, to beat the Panthers. But hey, this is the playoffs. If McDavid all of a sudden, because we know his potential still hasn't been tapped, if he ups at another level, watch out. If Draisaitl does his same thing, watch out. It could get very interesting very fast. And it's a matter of wearing them down. If the Oilers played the Florida Panthers last year in the playoffs, I think the Oilers win, just like the Golden Knights do, because the Florida Panthers were exhausted. This year, this team looks fresh every game. Right?
And that is not taken away from what Vegas did last year at all, because what they did last year, granted, Cap was kind of messed with at the end with Stone being hurt the last 2 years, right before magically coming back for game 1s of the playoffs. That's not taken away from that at all. That's not taken away from their team at all. But you were playing a team that is not playing on the ice today. You were playing a team that was very banged up, that basically exhausted from
3. They had 3 weeks to push into that. They
had 3 weeks to push into that last spot and get there, and they did it. And then they made it through round 1. Then they made it through round 2. Then they made it through round 3. And those alone will kill you if you didn't have to scrape and claw and bite and chew to get into the playoffs they did.
And remember this point too. That was a Boston Bruins with Patrice Bergeron on the ice team, which makes a massive difference and they eked out that Game 7 win, and the Bruins punish you. So their first round was exhausting, right? So again, I agree. I'm not taking anything away from the Knights and the talent they had on the ice, and Aiden Hill playing, his best hockey ever, coming out of it. But if it was last year and the Oilers made it through, I think the Oilers won the cup there.
Yeah.
And again, hey, we could be wrong here. And for everybody, there's something about watching hockey when you don't have a dog in the race, because you can watch it relaxed and enjoy the game. So the last couple of years, don't get me wrong, I want to see my Montreal Canadiens make the playoffs 100%. It's a lot less stress-free though, because I still remember, back when they made their cup run, how stressful each game was. Like, then I wasn't sleeping the night before. I had pre-game jitters, and I wasn't even going anywhere near that.
As the Western Conference champion, I might add, which will be the last time that ever happens, unless we hit another random time where they decide that they're going to do that again.
If chicken flu all of a sudden hits everybody, yeah.
If we end up in another pandemic, that may happen again. Who knows? But so I mean, we don't claim to be experts. We never have, but we do have hockey knowledge, and we do come at this at a level where we're looking at it and being we're trying to be a couch GM. So that's what we're going to do with all these. We're going to do them with all 32 teams. We're going to probably do them as 2 or 3 at a time, just so that, and we'll put them in the caption so you guys all know which teams are which, so that you guys can go and watch your favorite teams. Say you're not a fan of the Edmonton Oilers or the Florida Panthers, your team will be picked. We'll be doing a poll on our Instagram about who we should do next, as we are going to do the Utah team next, 100%. But we want to know who else you guys want with the Utah team. So we're going to do that on our Instagram. Make sure to go follow us at Post Huggers Podcast on all our social platforms, other than X, because they don't let you do the whole name. It's Post Huggers Pod. We're also on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as well as iHeartRadio. However you listen to podcasts, we're basically on it. So definitely check us out there. Make sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It helps us a lot grow our content. We want to get this out to every hockey fan we can, and make the game even better. We're going to be talking about Fanatics jerseys once those drop. Those should drop in a few days here, hopefully. Knowing Fanatics, they probably won't drop for until after June, even though they said they're going to drop in June. But we're hopeful that those drop soon. We can cover those. We're also going to be covering the PWHL jerseys and logos, which I know me and Steve are both itching to see. We're very excited for those. It's going to be very exciting to see those. They're doing great things for women's hockey, so we're very excited for that. But definitely make sure to follow us on all our social platforms. Thank you guys so much for listening to this, of course. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, or you have an idea of what or who may be traded or moved, comment down below. We always love to hear from you guys, especially about who you guys think might be moved, and who's playing well in the playoffs. This has been Heath and Steve.
Have a great one, hockey fans.
And always remember to hug your posts, guys.